Hello everyone, I'm Garratt and welcome back to the channel where you can watch me cook some delicious things in this tiny little kitchen. Now before we jump into the recipe, I just want to say a quick thank you to all of you that took part in the poll that I did on Facebook and also on the channel as well. And that was based off kind of feedback I got from you guys on the last video. Some of you messaged and emailed me saying they wanted to hear more about my personal life, the stuff I experienced growing up, and that was what that poll was for, to just kind of see if that was the case. Now you all voted in favour of a more in-depth video talking about my life and my experiences, so that's what I'm going to give you, so keep an eye out for that soon. Right, let's talk about the recipe. So I'm going to make today a steak with a chimichurri sauce. Now I'm filming this on a Saturday night, I've just got home from work, it's quite late, so I want something quick and also delicious. Now a chimichurri sauce is very simple to make. Now you can go on the internet and on YouTube and find all sorts of different variants of this sauce, and to be honest with you, a lot of people, chefs mainly, muck around with it, right? You know, they'll chuck all sorts of stuff into it, you know, like coriander, basil, even mint. I've seen all sorts of different things thrown into it, and actually when you break it down, it's a very, very simple sauce. It contains parsley, it contains garlic, olive oil, red wine vinegar, some chilli and some dried oregano. Use fresh if you can get it. And that is basically it. That's a basic traditional chimichurri sauce. You don't need anything else, and it's a great little sauce that will go with any kind of grilled meat, even fish, vegetables, but in this case a nice delicious sirloin steak. So if you get your face down here, we'll crack on and make the sauce. Right, okay, so let's crack on and make this sauce. So I'm going to get my flat leaf parsley, and you want to take off any really thick kind of woody stalks. You don't kind of really want those, but you know, just keep the smaller tender ones on. It doesn't really matter too much. And then I'm just going to bunch it all together and then just roughly chop it. It doesn't need to be really fine, just roughly chopped. And then we can just add that to our bowl. Next thing we're going to add is the garlic. I'm just going to lightly bash those and then just take off the skins. Now you want to make sure the garlic is fresh, don't use that jarred stuff, and you also want to make sure it's finely minced. Now you can use a microplane to do that. I've got one, but I'm going to show you a really simple method to get a nice fine paste without using a microplane. So all you need to do is just take the garlic and just roughly chop the cloves, and then we're going to take a small pinch of salt and add that to the chopped garlic. And the salt becomes an abrasive, which helps break down the garlic. So then what we need to do is take the back of your knife and just sort of squash it down and sort of slide it across your chopping board as well. Okay, gather it back up again, repeat the same thing. Okay, just like that, took seconds, okay? And you can see you've got a nice paste, so that can go in with the parsley. Next we're going to add some chilli. I'm just going to test this chilli by cutting it in half, and then just take a finger and just kind of rub the inside down where the membrane is, give it a lick, and that will kind of tell you how hot it is. Whew. I think I'll only use half of that. So I'm just kind of slice it into little strips and then just kind of really finely dice that as well. Get that in. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to add is some dried oregano. Now again, if you can get hold of fresh, use that, but dried is perfectly fine. So I'm going to go in with about half a teaspoon to start with. Again, you can always adjust it depending on your tastes. And now we're ready to add the oil and the vinegar. Right, so the first thing we're going to add is some extra virgin olive oil. I'm going to go in with about 3 tablespoons. The next thing to add is some red wine vinegar. I'm going to go in with about 2 tablespoons. Well, it's a dessert spoon really, but they're not far off. And then we're just going to mix the whole thing together so that everything's combined. I think that could do with just a touch more oil. And once you've mixed it, just give it a quick taste, just to kind of check for seasoning. Right, so that's the chimichurri sauce done, and that will quite happily sit to one side until you're ready to serve. Now onto the sauteed potatoes. They're very simple to do. You want to take a nice waxy new potato, something like a charlotte will do, and you want to cook them in some salted boiling water for about 10 minutes till they're just nice and tender. You want to drain them and then leave them to cool. Once cool enough to handle, you want to cut them into nice bite-sized chunks, then season with salt and pepper, and then you want to put them into a pan just with a little olive oil, and then you want to fry them for about 10 to 15 minutes until they're nice and golden and crisp. And then just for the last few minutes, just add a touch of butter, because that's going to really help them go nice and golden and crisp, and it adds to the flavour as well. And that's your sauteed potatoes done. Really quick, really simple and delicious. Now whilst those are cooking away, you can get on and fry your steaks. Now I have done a video on how to cook a steak, which I'll put a link to on the screen somewhere, and I'll put a link down below as well. So I'm going to go grab my steak now and get it in the pan. Right, okay, so I've got my steak here. Now I'm using sirloin, but you can use whatever steak you like. But the important thing is when you're buying steak, you want to make sure that it's got plenty of marbling, lots of fat that's running through the steak itself, because that means two things. Firstly, flavour, but it's also going to keep your steak moist whilst it's cooking. Now I'm going to treat this steak very, very simply. I'm just going to start off with just a touch of oil on the steak, not in the pan, and then I'm just going to rub that over the steak, flip it over, do the same the other side, and then just wash my hands, and then season both sides with freshly cracked black pepper, plenty of it. And we're not adding any salt at this point because salt can draw out moisture, so if we add salt to this now, it can have a tendency to make your steaks a bit drier. So what I like to do is when the steak's cooked and it's resting, I add the salt then. Next thing you need to do is get your pan nice and hot, okay? You need to open all the doors, windows, get your fan extractor on. Don't add any oil to the pan because it's going to fill your house with smoke. That's why we added it to the steak first. Right, so now that your pan is nice and hot, let's go in and add our steak. Now I like my steaks about medium rare, so I'm going to cook this for about 2 minutes per side. But again, if you want to learn how to make the perfect steak, I'll put a link to that video in the description. Right, so our steak has rested for a good 3 to 5 minutes. So let's get it on our plate so we can serve it up, like so. Then some of our sauteed potatoes, which have just cooled slightly. And then just a handful of some simple salad leaves. And if I just turn that round as we finish the top of our steak with that amazing chimichurri sauce. And there we have it, a very simple but tasty steak dinner. Got a nice piece of sirloin, that chimichurri sauce, some sauteed potatoes, and then some kind of green stuff here. Now the only thing I have to do now is to stuff it in my face. Right, so I've got my knife and fork, let's dig in. Now, one thing I always say is whenever you go to like a restaurant or steakhouse, pub, whatever, and they give you a steak knife for your steak, that's always a red flag for me, because you shouldn't need a hacksaw to get into a steak, all right? You should use a perfectly normal knife like that, and it should just slide through nice and easily. If you've got to hack at it, it's not been cooked right and it's not been rested. So just a normal knife is fine. So I'm going to go in with that steak, and of course, some of that chimichurri. Let's go in. That sauce will transform any steak into something amazing. And whilst it's got an amazing flavour just of its own, one thing it also does is bring out the meaty flavours of that steak. It really enhances it. I'm not going to bother with this stuff, right? We all know what salad tastes like, but it does go nice with a steak. But in all seriousness, as a date night dinner, my steak with chimichurri sauce is a dandy bit of grub indeed. Right, so there we have it. That's my steak with chimichurri sauce and sauteed potatoes. Oh, excuse me. But honestly, that chimichurri sauce, don't take my word for it, just make it, all right? It's delicious. Even if you don't use it on a steak, you know, slap it on some cooked chicken, a bit of fish, over some veg. Honestly, it's really, really nice. But anyway, that wraps up today's video. Thanks again for watching. If you like what you see, then please stick a like down below, leave a comment, share it across your social media platforms, and I'll see your gorgeous faces next time for more tasty fun and frolics, and bye for now. I think this calls for a good lunge, actually. Like a good lunge after eating some steak. Oh, that's enough of that.